Let's spend just a few moments talking about the decisions made by others. Pretty universally, and I wish I had a number that I could tell you that it's happened thousands of times, but I certainly believe it has, that leaders have expressed to me that, man, I am frustrated that the folks underneath me, my team members, just plain and simply won't make a decision, won't make a choice, won't decide on anything. And they're constantly, lining up in my office and calling me and sending me emails, forcing me into that decision choice. And, I understand that frustration and I get that. And, some areas by their very nature, by being overly policy driven, by overly procedurally driven, force some bottlenecking of decisions to occur. Now, let's talk about a couple of ways that we can push decisions down to our team members, sometimes even when they don't want to make decisions and don't want to make choices. First thing I want you to be aware of is a phenomenon called upward delegation. That is where individuals below you bring things up to you, the leader, or up to the boss's level for the intent of that person making the decision, and here's the important piece, therefore transferring all the ownership of that issue. Now, most folks don't, and I believe this fully, most folks don't walk into the boss's office or your office and say, oh my gosh, I can't possibly make a decision on this. You're going to have to do it for me. They're actually a lot more stealthy in their approach. What they'll do is they'll come to you and say, hey, I've got this particular issue. What do you think? And based on sometimes the goodness of our own hearts, we answer that question. We say, well, here's what I would do. And that team member at that moment in time has just been relieved of all the accountability associated with that, because now when something goes wrong, they get to raise their hand and say, you know what? I asked the boss about that, and he or she said this. And then that became the marching order for that period of time. And I got to tell you, once a pattern like that becomes created, you have a really, really tough time overcoming that codependency on you, and you're making decisions and you're providing opinions and guidance on almost every kind of issue. So literally what you have to do as a boss, as a leader, as a manager, as a supervisor, you have to have some discipline in this process and say, you know what? You know exactly what to do here. You've done this before. I have full faith in you. I have every confidence in you. I'm going to trust your judgment. Or you say things like, what do you think the answer is? And then without giving any of your opinion or any of your editorializing behind that, let that team member make that choice. Now, as a boss, as a leader, you have to be consistent with this behavior. Otherwise, you're going to live with that lining up at your doorstep and having an email inbox full of 200 emails a day asking for your thoughts, opinion, and guidance on things, which really is a transfer of decision making and ownership to you. The other phenomenon I want you to think about, and it's one of the more pervasive elements in a lot of organizations about why decisions don't get made, is a lack of feedback about those decisions. This is going to connect some dots back to one of our very first times together when we talked about feedback, positive and corrective. One of the reasons a lot of team members are hesitant or choose not to make decisions when it's theirs to make, or even when you've encouraged them to make it, is because they don't get any feedback about that decision. Or worse yet, they only hear about it when the decision was bad. If a team member makes a good decision and a good choice, they should hear positive feedback. If a team member makes a bad decision or a bad choice, there should either be some teaching feedback or corrective feedback based on the situation and how many times it's occurred. But I really want you to think about that. If there is a void in feedback when a team member has made a good decision, what's the encouragement for them to continue to make decisions? And the answer to that is there's none. The last element about other people's decision making that I want you to think about is being overly reliant on procedures and overly reliant on policies. Policies have a use and a purpose in life, and there's certain legality and risk arbitrage that go along with it. But with that said, I'd also encourage you to really, really be careful about the volume of policies and procedures that you rely on a regular basis. Don't use policy and procedure as a crutch to eliminate good human judgment and good human decision making. Matter of fact, I would tell you the best run organizations in the world are those that have the fewest procedures and policy restrictions that they operate in. Literally, those are the ones that turn their people loose and say, do the right thing all the time by customers and other team members. Those are the best run and best performing organizations out there. So again, the things I want you to think about there is pushing decisions down, avoiding the temptation of making decisions for others, making sure that your organization is not overly proceduralized, and always making sure that people receive feedback about the decisions that they get and not just corrective feedback when they've made a bad choice.